It's Monday. Hello, everybody. It is Monday, and I am extra excited for Monday this week. Not just because I get to talk to you for another week, but also it's election day in Canada, so one way or the other, this insanity will be over, and we can go back to being nice, slightly, aloof people, as is our Canadian way, and not this insanity that has turned us into a mini American election for the last 5 weeks. Oh my God, no matter what happens, I cannot wait for it to be over. I am done. And most of the country is with me. It's just been ugly and yucky. And we're all like, this is not us. It's like the opposite. It's like, Mandy Moore should walk in from the past at any point and go, this is not us, because this has been us for the last 5 weeks. If you don't watch This Is Us, then that made no sense. But anyway, that's not what's been front of mind. Some conversations on Twitch have lately have really touched me, on a human level. And I want to explore some of the concepts it made me think about. We're not going to get directly to that conversation today, because it's one of those things where you have to go back to go forward. I need to lay down an establishment thing to really get all my thoughts out on this. And as those of you who watch this channel a lot know, my thoughts are quite long and quite complicated and work in rather odd extended metaphors. So I'm going to do my best here, because we have to go. It took me all the way back to the idea of truth. Truth and justice. You guys know I love Superman. I'm wearing an Aquaman shirt right now, but you guys know I love Superman. There's Superman in the background. There's also Momo sleeping in the background. You will never meet two more virtuous figures than Momo and Superman. And then I love the Spectre. I freaking love the Spectre, the DC Comics character. I love the Spectre. And it's because of that idea of justice. He's like a metaphysical garbage man to me. That's how I'd write the Spectre. It's not lofty. It's just gotta get done. There's gotta be a certain amount of fairness in the world, or nothing really feels like it has meaning, right? This is the torture of the human condition, right? And obviously this is something YouTube's algorithm doesn't care about much. So you know what's coming? Patreon. You should become a member. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Your patron support allows me to not care about the YouTube algorithm. It allows me to go to the YouTube algorithm, because social media algorithms affect our lives. They influence our lives way too much. And you notice I said social media algorithms, not social media itself. And that is where I'm coming into the topic for today, because I needed to find an in for this particular subject that might make this relevant to other people. So that's where I'm going with this, okay? And it is Mark Zuckerberg's speech at Georgetown University that I'm going to use as a jumping off point for this away in, because he made this speech that got all the chattering classes chattering at Georgetown, because he did a lecture on free expression where people were not allowed to ask him questions live. They had to submit questions in advance that were then curated, rewritten, and asked by Georgetown University's politics founding executive director. Kind of a bad look from the beginning, right? The CEO of Facebook, one of the greatest monetizers of our speech on the planet, talking about freedom of expression, is another layer of cluelessness, tone deafness, hypocrisy, whatever you want. I'm not a big fan of tone deafness, just because I think it's very neurotypical privilege. But that's something for another day. I think that talking about tone deafness, if people have to understand tone, then it disadvantages people who, aren't the most socially adept, or maybe on the autism spectrum or something like that. But that's a topic for another day. I'm not going to argue that, because I feel like that's a bit shaky. The whole idea of being tone deaf. You're either right or you're wrong. You shouldn't tone police, right? Like, can we at least keep that social justice concept that it doesn't matter how angry someone is. It doesn't matter how unpleasant someone is. If they're right, they're right. If they're wrong, they're wrong. And this is, it's a difficult one. And yet it's not. It's one of those things, right? Like, this is one of those ones where a lot of people are reacting with their gut because destroying someone's reputation on social media is something that people can understand as an existential threat. You know who doesn't understand that as an existential threat? Guys like Mark Zuckerberg, whose reputations don't really matter because he's created a form of, like, he's created a tool that everybody kind of has to use, whether we like it or not. So he doesn't care if you like him. He doesn't care if he has a great reputation. He can get up there at Georgetown University and not even be directly questioned by students. He gets his answers curated and asked nicely and politely. So, you know, this is why I wonder if Mark Zuckerberg was perhaps the best person to talk about freedom of expression, because a big failure Mark Zuckerberg has, and this is something I haven't seen in any other op-ed, which is why I'm talking about it, is he has this tendency to seem to be more of a human processor of information. He never connects to what he's speaking of. And this is different than connecting to his impact on other people. He himself does not seem to connect to what he's speaking to. And he did connect to this speech. The 20 minutes of it that I watched before I had to turn it off because all I kept seeing is that SNL sketch of moisten eyes, moisten eyes. Sometimes comedy is the greatest purveyor of truth. But he does seem emotionally connected to this issue. And I think if I'm to guess, an educated guess, it's through this existential threat he seems to be experiencing of, you know, if Elizabeth Warren gets elected president, she's promised / threatened to break up the big technology companies. And this is something Mark Zuckerberg cares about a lot, and he's worried about it. He's worried about it, and it shows because he emotionally connected to this, but he emotionally connected it to it in a selfish way instead of the greater good way. And he tried to mask this in an appeal to the greater good through free speech. But what it really was no, Facebook has to keep making gobs and gods of money, and we don't want to get broken up. We'll be regulated. That's okay, because we have enough lobbyists that we can control the process to that extent. But we don't want to get broken up. We don't want to have to sell Instagram and all the other stuff that Facebook controls. But free speech, yeah, free speech seems like a good argument. My nose is going red. Sorry, I was cleaning. But Facebook arguing freedom of expression right now is like the Dallas Police Department talking about race relations. They just have no moral authority to talk about it because Facebook does curate content. Most social media companies do. And more they are leaning into this idea that they are a publisher, but a publisher who does not have the burden of regulations that publishers do. This is something that cannot last. Eventually, someone will either legislate or rule in court that social media companies are to some extent responsible for what they allow to stay on social media. But then you get into this, and if you go back to like 2015, I talked about this, that the only way out of this social media mess is to treat them like publishers. It's the thing that makes sense. They make money off content other people produce and put it out to the world through this platform that publishes what they say. it's no different than these websites that don't really have an editorial staff. They just, yeah, okay, put up whatever you want. Here's the codes, right? They are a form of publisher. Now, they are a unique form of publisher in the user-generated content sort of thing. And so there need to be allowances made for that sometimes stuff is going to slip through. And I think that like a reasonable efforts standard has to be applied. But the fact that Mark Zuckerberg actually took the position that, misleading political ads are perfectly fine because free speech. This is why I think he's actually engaging in emotional reasoning right now and not actually thinking this through. He's adopting a point of view we know he doesn't believe because he curates other sorts of content. Like, my God, they were shutting down drag queens for using their drag names for a while before, public outcry stopped them from doing it. They wouldn't let me use my professional name on Facebook. They made me use my full legal name, and I didn't want to do that because I wanted to use Facebook for professional reasons. And once I had to use my full legal name, my entire Facebook thing changed. It's now just cat pictures and my own personal spew. I don't put anything related to my work on my Facebook page because, with the live shows and everything like that, I play a character when I do comedy stuff. It's a character. It's not me. I can't post as that character under my full name. It's not the same thing. I don't want confusion. There is a craft to what I do. I don't post as Beelzebub or Princess Sparkle Muffin either, right? I get their own. I keep thinking about starting up a Princess Sparkle Muffin Instagram. I don't know. It's one of those things I'll think about. But Facebook does curate, and Facebook does bury things, and Facebook throws entire people off the platform for undesirable speech. But instead of just dealing with the undesirable content that these individuals have posted, instead of just leaving it based on actions, they have thrown entire people off of Facebook. They have excommunicated them. They have banished them. They have, the people of Athens, ancient Greece, have decided to banish, throw somebody out of, strip them of their online citizenship. That is way harsher than censoring a post or telling somebody, hey, cut it out. You are taking away that person's expressive rights on that platform forever. They never have a chance to reform. They can't get back on. So Facebook is not a free speech platform. We all know that. We all accept that. But so after throwing off a guy like Milo Yiannopoulos, that we've all kind of known what Milo is for a really long time, they cut him off. And yet they claim, no, politicians should be allowed to lie in political ads because that's free speech. This makes no sense. The amount of damage a misleading political ad can do is way more than any power Milo ever had. Like, I'm serious. As somebody who had direct run-ins with Milo, it wasn't pleasant. He's a nasty little man, but he's harmless compared to what outright propaganda running on a platform like Facebook does. And this is the thing. Freedom of speech is one concept, one ethical concept that I believe in very strongly, which I think you understand based on me just advocating. Maybe it was kind of harsh to throw Milo off Facebook completely. But free speech is a concept that must stand alongside other concepts as well. Like the idea that facts and honesty matter. You are not allowed to lie everywhere under free speech protections. For instance, you can't lie in court. For some odd reason, the US government decided that politicians are allowed to lie and there should be no punishment for that outside of court. And, it's kind of weird because they impeached Bill Clinton essentially for lying. And yet, look at us now. In terms of consistent morality, if you can impeach a president for lying, then political parties just morally, I'm not talking about legally, morally, shouldn't be allowed to just lie. The problem I have with the whole Facebook and false information is I don't trust these media companies to determine what's true and what's a lie, what's a deliberately misleading statement. Because I don't get the sense that guys like Mark Zuckerberg have a really close relationship with the truth. So it's a who watches the Watchmen kind of paradigm. And I don't like the idea of Facebook being able to decide what's true and what's a lie. I personally think that Facebook should start with defamation of private people should not be allowed. A regular person who's not a public figure, go post a negative Google review on their business if you want. That's what it's there for. But don't slander them on Facebook. People have a certain expectation. I don't like these, I'm going to totally defame someone on social media, but I'm not a muckraker. I'm a victim. I'm a whistleblower. All that stuff. When your first step is to rip someone on social media, I'm sorry, I don't see you as a victim. No. I don't like that practice. I've seen too many people get I've seen people be victimized by that practice. If somebody's a public figure, especially a politician where taxpayers are paying their salaries, there's a certain public right to know. If somebody is a very powerful figure in the media, there's a public right to know. When whether or not people want to consume a product or shop at a large chain of stores or something like that is somewhat built on a reputation, a personal reputation of someone. There is a public right to know. That's fair. But those are the very people, those powerful, rich people. Those are the very people that can already fight this stuff through lawyers. They have enough money to hire lawyers and sue the poster for defamation and all that stuff. Get cops to take it down, all that stuff. Get Facebook to take it down. I mean, we've known there's a double standard on social media for a really long time. Again, going back to Milo, he made so many people miserable. It was when he went after Leslie Jones that all of a sudden people did something. Why? Because she's famous, right? That's not fair. And there are certain, like I said, people need to believe life is fair to an extent. Even the people who go, life's not fair most often, they're trying to tell themselves that. The human brains, human souls need a sense of fairness, and we need a sense of justice. Hence, truth, justice in the Facebook way, as this video title. Now, there are a lot of people out there right now who don't feel like the world is fair or just to them. And like I said, this was one of the things that have my wheels turning. I think that our entire paradigm regarding fairness and justice is skewed right now, which is, like I said, this is where I'm getting. But how do we treat each other fairly? If we communicate through platforms we know are okay with monetized lying, Like, I want to be clear about this. This isn't somebody just posting something on Facebook. These are political ads that Facebook is paid for. Facebook gets paid to run these ads that are false or misleading. Now, a network or cable news organization is not allowed to do this. They are regulated. There was a Trump ad a while back, a few weeks back, that I know CNN and I believe MSNBC refused to run because it was not factual and they rejected the ad. Broadcasters have to do that not just because they're legally required to, but it's the principle of the thing. It's that people have to be able to trust that what they see on this network is factual. Mistakes are one thing, but they are running lies they know to be lies. That breaks down trust. And this is why I mentioned the Canadian election off the top, because I have lost trust in most of the legacy media in Canada this election, because they didn't just make mistakes in reporting this time around. Their data analysis was so flawed and so skewed. I am just going to question everything they run now of a vaguely scientific bent. I can't trust them anymore. So I'm like, where do I get my news from? I've got to get Canadian news from like The Economist and Bloomberg and things like that, which means not a lot of Canadian news, but at least I've never caught those services in deliberately misleading practices. They've made mistakes, especially in my opinion, but they haven't just run garbage. And Facebook's going to get into the same problem. Now they have pretty much made it clear that they've been honest about the lying. They basically we think it's fine. We think it's fine if we get paid for people to lie through us. We think that's fine. How does anybody trust anything you see on Facebook? I don't. Most of the time, I won't even click through news links. I share a lot of news on Facebook, but it's mostly like media analysis because I need to vent and I want my Canadian friends to kind of know what their media is saying to them so I can kind of insulate them against this crap. And then it's not just Facebook, right? There's this concerted effort right now from various online media groups to fill our heads with crap to make us easier to control. And that sounds very conspiratorial. In this case, I really believe it's true, because Facebook's commodity is its users. It is nothing without the people who are on that platform viewing ads. Now, anybody who's Facebook ads are, unless you do this massive buy and you've basically got this national brand that you can just run again and again and again, do 1 million impressions, Facebook ads don't do shit, first of all. It's a highly ineffective form of advertising. But it's going to get less effective because people know they're being lied to now. And this is what Mark Zuckerberg's cynical, out of touch, leaning on free speech did. There are other considerations at play. And one is people have to know they can trust you. And Mark Zuckerberg has basically made it abundantly clear that he and his company think lying is okay. And free speech proponents like myself do not think lying is okay. I support free and equal speech platforms where if one person says a lie, another person is equally empowered to call that out and to to show something's not right here. And that has completely fallen down in social media. People cannot compete with the volume and the velocity of these lies. And that's the problem with it. It's one thing to say, I don't agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. And another thing to go, no, it's okay. It's fine. Because again, it isn't just allowing things to be posted on their platform. They are taking money for these lies. And that's very different. That says something about their corporate identity. That says something about who they are as a company. And I believe that that is eventually going to erode their power. Something's going to happen. Maybe Elizabeth Warren will get her way and break up the big tech companies. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I'm still mulling that over. But something's gotta give. Remember MySpace? You can't go out as a communications company and go, lying is okay. And that changes the way people interact with you. And that undermines the idea of free expression. Because, the thing that Zuckerberg mouthed but didn't really understand is, the whole idea of free speech is this idea that the truth will eventually win out in the battle of ideas. That can't work if you monetize lying. And I really think it's different for Facebook to go, look, we can't control what people post on their Facebook pages. It's another thing entirely to accept money for political ads and not vet them and not disclose who put out the ad. Like, that kind of transparency is extremely important to free expression. Because the minute you monetize expression, it's not free anymore. I do not want freedom of expression auctioned off to the highest bidder. That's not the concept. It has to be a fair fight in the battleground of ideas. And if Facebook is putting their thumb on the scale that way, because advertising's vetted, they have to approve ads. And they've said, no, we're going to let lies through. When did misleading advertising become okay? Like, Zuckerberg is being extremely duplicitous here. Well, things just made a lot of sense, didn't it? Anyway, I'll leave it there. Interesting to see what you guys think. It's a difficult one, isn't it? And that's why I went away from the whole concept of freedom of expression and went with, that's not the only thing that matters here. So hope you enjoyed this little dive into it. It's complicated, really interesting to hear your guys' thoughts. Instead of just agreeing with me or disagreeing with me, I want to hear your guys' thoughts. Like, leave out whether you agree or disagree if you want. I just want to hear your thoughts. I want freedom of expression. I want to know what this has inspired you guys to think, okay? Now I'm going to monetize. Patreon. You should become a member. Patreon.com/Leanna K, because I may believe in free speech, but I got bills to pay. Thanks for watching.